I think the ultimate glass ceiling will be when we finally see a woman sitting in the White House as our first woman president. And, we came pretty close this year, I think, or in the past 2 years with, Hillary Clinton and, some other women. We had Sarah Palin running for vice president, and I think there are a number of women that will get active the next time around, and we'll see, who shakes out of the field. So, progress is slow, and it's inevitable, I think. I think it's inevitable.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as I started to say, I'm a product of a women's college, and I guess I would say maybe it hasn't been an overt choice, but something that I've been drawn to as a compelling reason to get involved in public discourse. I've always been behind women's issues and the importance of raising our girls and young women to think outside of the non-traditional roles that they could play. Certainly, in the era that I grew up, my mom was a homemaker. My father went off to work. My mom was a homemaker. And she was probably, as I said to many people, a feminist without ever realizing the term or knowing who the key actors were in the women's movement. My mother was widowed very young. This was in 1971, where women didn't have a lot of roles outside of the house other than maybe part-time jobs or getting involved in the PTA or things like that. But my mother, because of my father's circumstance, had to go off to work and hold a full-time job. And so that was a key role model for me that, other kids in my grammar school classes had stay-at-home mothers. My mother went to work every day. And one of the things she instilled in me was the importance of getting an education and going to college and, being able to earn your own way. So, through hard work and scholarship, I ended up getting a college degree and then a master's degree and then another master's degree. And so, personally, my outlet for my convictions on this subject has always been, to help in ways that I think further the cause, whether it's through the Women's Political Caucus and getting involved with getting women into those positions. I serve on the board of the Girl Scouts, which is another important entity. So I think historically my whole life has just been about, trying to help women engage in that important conversation about, where they can go in society and what contributions they can make.
What do you do now?
I've had a long and esteemed career in public affairs in New Jersey. I've been everything from a lobbyist to a communications director. I've also been an adjunct professor at a number of colleges teaching communications and leadership.
I think we have one of those guys here.
I've had a number of stints up and down State Street here over the years, and I currently work for the Healthcare Institute of New Jersey, which is the Pharmaceutical and Medical Technology Association in New Jersey. And so it's important work, and it's...
What were your master's degrees in?
I have a master's in corporate communications, and the other master's is an MBA.
Very good, very good. I recall that really a major issue that was part of the feminist agenda was, of course, the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, which came very, very close to become part of the Constitution. It went through Congress. It got quite a few states, and it just couldn't get over the hump of the last couple of states. And there was, unlike a lot of amendments, I think there was a death sentence on it, that it had to go through in a certain number of years, and it didn't. Whereas a lot of the amendments, Mississippi just ratified, I think, the 14th or 15th Amendment about a year ago. The Civil War has been over for quite a while. I'm glad they joined us. But what I was concerned about was when I listened to younger women, women my daughter's ages, there really is no concern about it in the ERA. They don't even talk about it. I'm not even sure they know what it is anymore. Is there a generational gap between the younger women who essentially are coming up, who are better educated now than the men? And as a group, they're better educated than men. and older women to whom ERA was so terribly important?
My fear is there probably is a generational gap. I interact with young women frequently, and I think while they understand the gaps in the political landscape, I'm not so sure that they have fully embraced, what the women in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, and in particular the early 70s, were a key part for the women's rights movement, because so many things happened, and the ERA is one of them. I'm sure, the familiarity with the ERA and why that was, why there were so many champions of that in the early 70s, it has probably been lost on a generation or more, just because, as you said, the amendment was retired. What a lot of people don't realize is every legislative session in Congress, it's reintroduced with sponsors. So it's still there. I'm not sure there's a constituency behind the amendment to, really take advantage of a key point in history as it was back in the early 70s. But it's an important part of women's history, and I think it's something that if we don't teach our young women about the significance of that movement and that era, it'll be lost for generations to come. And I think we've really lost something special there and not telling the full story of feminism in America.
Do we need it? Do we need the ERA anymore? With the court cases that have dealt with some of the issues you've raised, especially
amendments
employment?
have been passed on a lot less. I would argue we still do need the ERA, and I think it's an important expression of our country's values when we say, that we're not going to discriminate based on the gender of a particular population in society. So I think it is an important amendment, and I would like to see it have a renewed vigor in the country, and continue to be a inspiration for people.
If there's a difference between attitudes of the younger women and the older women on ERA, is there also a division on the question of abortion on demand?
People tell me there is a division on the whole issue of choice. And, while I don't have any, firsthand knowledge, the Caucus obviously hasn't conducted studies. I'm not sure who has. I'm told there are generational gaps.
So the younger women would be more
conservative.
More conservative.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing, from many people who work with young women in colleges.
I'm hearing that too. I'm just
particularly
curious.
Women's colleges, in our high schools. And, it's fascinating, I suppose, in terms of where young women get their information, who their role models are. Is that something that's born of faith? There's a resurgence of faith in the United States, which I think is part and parcel of where we are with the economy. So do they adopt those views because of their religious beliefs? Is it because of their role models in the family? Or is it something else? Is it the right to life movement that has been so visible and certainly persuasive? I don't know. I think they're all hypotheses for someone to explore, and it would be, I think, indeed a fascinating discovery to see, what shapes their value system. The young women in society, where do they get their information?
So you think that women's studies lives?
It does live, and I think, I hope it lives for quite some time. And when the day arrives when we have true equality, maybe we can banish the women's studies classes on our college campuses to a more esteemed part of our archives. But until then, I think it's an important lesson for our current generation, and certainly for generations to